Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. Today's special guest is Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Bernadette?
I'm freezing, but great. Yeah, we had our first snowfall here in Canada, so it has
It's
begun.
that it's that time of year, isn't it? When I live here in Boise, Idaho, and sometimes we go from yesterday, I think it was 80, and this morning I woke up and it was below freezing. So I think
Mm.
we might have to turn off the air conditioner and turn on the heater in the same day. So,
Oh, I turned on mine long time ago.
gotcha.
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast, Kyle. I'm so happy to have you here and to hear your story.
I'm really excited to share, Bernadette.
Yeah. So can you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
So my name is Kyle Jetzel, and I am I've for years I've said I'm a happily married father of 6 kids. That's what I do, right? That's kind of how I identify the most important things in my life. But the reason I'm here today is we about almost 2 years ago, my wife of 30 years passed away suddenly,
Wow.
leaving me to raise my 6 kids. And so
Mhm.
that's about as much as you probably need to know for the reason I'm here to talk to you today, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, we can definitely unpack quite a bit just from that. Yeah. You have 6 kids.
I do. They range in ages. I have 5 sons and 1 daughter.
Hmm.
And my oldest is will be, I think, 30 this year. And my
Hmm.
youngest are 15-year-old twins. One of my twins is a daughter. So I've got 5 sons and one little girl at the very end there.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is fatherhood like? I don't know, Mama. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I've heard it's a crash course in leadership.
Mm,
It's like the hardest and most rewarding thing we'll ever do, right? I really believe that my personal opinion is that no success in life can compensate for failure in our own home.
mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of been the way I've looked at my family and being a father, right? If our God likes to be called father, that's pretty, a lot of, then I think that's probably a pretty important mantle
Yeah.
to carry, right? And
Mhm.
so I take that pretty seriously as a father of 6 kids
Mhm.
and the husband to my wife. I think
Mhm.
that's where I like to focus as much attention as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. Let's rewind to get to know you. What was it like growing up? What was your childhood like?
So I grew up in an area of inner city Dallas, Texas called Oak Cliff,
Hmm.
and it's kind of I grew up in a kind of a lower middle class, kind of a poor area.
Mm.
So a lot of the things that surrounded me were the things that come with that. There was an undertone of struggle and violence, and as a young man growing up in that situation, you kind of have to
Mhm.
you kind of have to grow into that, right? You either prove you're a man physically or you get really horribly taken advantage of in my neighborhood. And so as a kid, I learned to fight, and I learned the threat of fighting was a powerful motivator.
Mm.
Um, Now, when I met my wife, I knew that that wasn't growing up in that atmosphere. I saw the damage that it did to families, and I saw
Mm.
that probably being, ruling with an iron fist over my family probably wasn't going to be
Mm.
long term the most effective way to father kids and to be a good husband.
Mhm.
And so I found myself what I call a Southern belle, right? A sweet, feminine, beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And I knew that her sweetness and would counteract a lot of my uh, the things that I had been grown into, my aggressive nature and those kind of things.
Mm.
And sure enough, that's really what she did. She loved me I think she probably loved me into a better man.
Mhm.
And she brought with her this a sense of beauty and love. And as I saw her and how she approached the world, I think it bled into me
Mhm.
and helped me to understand that really there's no better way to influence and to lead than through love and kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
And there's still they're still deep down, they're still the rough and tough, kind of aggressive man in me.
Mm.
But I really have learned to manage that part of my life so that I can give the things that my kids need and my wife needed. So, growing up in that atmosphere, you learn a lot of things that you have to unlearn if you want to raise a happy family, that functions well.
Mm.
And so that's kind of always been my goal, is to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She sounds so sweet, and uh must have had so much wonderful impact in your life and the kids as well. And as you were talking, she maybe humble you in a way, if that makes sense, and teach you the gentle side of doing things or life. And it's a
Yeah,
beautiful.
I remember one time we were watching TV, and this was pretty early in our marriage, and there was a report on TV of a man who had snatched a little girl and then abused her.
Mm,
And I remember sitting there watching this, and I was just getting furious, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I told my wife, she came over, she saw me, and I think I was sweating. I was so mad, right?
yeah.
And I said, you know what? Don't you let me catch that sucker, because I can do time if I need to, right? I was so mad. I was so pent up with anger and fury
Mm,
that somebody would do this kind of thing. I wanted justice, right?
mm,
And she walked over, and I remember she put her arm around me, and she kind of nuzzled up next to me, and she said, you know what? I can feel the heat radiating off you. I can tell you're really angry.
yeah.
And that's understandable. She
Mm,
said, but maybe you should focus on compassion for the little girl and her family,
mm,
and put your focus in that direction.
mhm,
And because of the way she managed me and she approached me
mhm,
with such loving kindness, it that moment right there, I remember thinking, wow, when you focus on the compassion and the love for the family that's been harmed,
mhm,
you feel it changes your heart,
mm,
right? From justice to mercy, right? From justice to grace. And certainly I think we all need grace, right? But at the time I was really intent on justice, and it would eat me alive because I would focus on those things. And so that moment, I remember that moment specifically because she did that many, many times in my life.
mm,
And through that taught me that that what we focus on grows,
mm,
right? If we focus on anger and bitterness and hate and unfairness, those things grow. But if we focus on kindness and compassion and love,
mm.
those things grow, and those things make us better people, right? And so she was tremendous in my life in that capacity.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. When did you meet your wife?
Um, I was 25 and she was 20 when we got married. She had just turned 20, so I kind of married her a little bit young. But I knew my temperament and my personality was pretty aggressive,
Mhm,
and so and I grew up in a pretty volatile home, a situation where there was a lot of it was just a lot of stress,
mhm,
and I knew that had affected me, and I carried that with me.
mhm.
And so when I started dating, my attitude was when I dated was, I'm either going to marry you or we're going to break up. So if I could see it wasn't going to work, I would just say, hey, this is not going to work, and I
Mm,
wouldn't really spend a lot of time with somebody who wasn't a calming influence in my life, and I didn't think would make my life better.
mm,
And so when I met her, she was completely different. She had a spirit of love that just was radiated from her. She had this light behind her eyes
mm,
that shined,
mhm.
and it just was so intoxicating, right? To see the light behind her eyes.
Yeah.
And so, and when I met her, I didn't know if she was the one, but it didn't take me long to figure out she was so patient and kind with me. And it
Mhm.
didn't take me long to figure that out. And so we got married when I was 25 and she was 20. And we didn't have our first couple of kids until 3 or 4 years into our marriage. So we met and we got married in 1991 is when we got married. So
Okay. Wow. I want to thank you for your courage, your bravery, and just for speaking from a place of pain and love and gratitude. because that's very rare to find, even though most of us do have that. And I can tell that you've done so much healing, and the pain at times, it fluctuates, it comes and it goes, but you want to inspire and help people. And I want to thank you for that. And
Oh,
thank you
you're
for
welcome. Thank you for
sharing.
having me. I
Yes.
really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Mm,
I heard somebody one time say, a good man is not a weak man. A good man is a monster that
mm,
has learned to manage himself, right?
mm,
And I believe that. I believe um, that all of our emotions are important, but managing all of our emotions are very important too.
mhm,
And when my wife passed away, um, all my kids just looked right at me. I could see that they looked to me to be uh, a model and to show them the way.
yeah, yeah.
And I knew that we weren't the first ones that this had happened to. People have lost spouses, and
Mhm,
children have lost their parents.
mhm,
And so I didn't want to just let life happen to us.
mhm,
We had worked hard as a family to create a world where our kids were happy and thriving and felt, confident and were ready to go get the world. And when my wife passed away and I started researching and studying it, I realized that that could destroy
mm,
kids' lives, and it could destroy my life, right? That's something that does happen very frequently.
yeah.
And because I had worked so hard to create a world where we just had a lot of happiness, I thought I'm not letting that happen, right? So
Mm,
I think one of the things that I did that made the biggest impact is I went to work and I researched how can I um, make sure my kids know they're loved and want to excel in life,
mhm,
and not use this as an opportunity to fall into the trap of discouragement or frustration or anger or bitterness,
mhm,
because that will lead us down a path that will lead us away from goodness. And
mm,
so I made it a goal of mine very early on, and I think I kind of ignored my own grief for a while
mm,
so that I could make sure that my kids had a plan and a path to get through it and be capable and still continue to enjoy life and love life and do
mhm,
the things that my wife had built into our family through her beauty.
mhm,
So I really wanted to do that. So part of the reason I wrote the book is every night when I would sit down, it's when you lose a spouse, especially when that
mm,
we'd been married for 30 years, and she and I considered our marriage to be a top 1% happy marriage. That's how happy we were together.
yeah.
And it wasn't because our life had been easy. We had faced difficulties and tragedies together,
Mhm,
but it had brought us together very closely. And
mhm,
so, um, when you lose a spouse, right? I mean, I built my world around her. She was my everything,
yeah.
and you know, she's gone. She's not there, and I couldn't. There was a lot of things I couldn't face. I couldn't go to my own bedroom for a month afterwards, and so I would sit up at night writing, uh, in my basically writing my thoughts and my ideas and my plan for success, and how I
Mhm,
was going to make her proud and how I was going to support my children. And I would do that every night. And I realized that that was soothing for me. It was therapeutic for me to
mm,
tell stories about her that my kids would know, and to reiterate to myself that I was going to thrive through this tragedy.
mm,
And a lot of times I would just fall asleep writing on the couch and sleep on the couch, for almost a month before I even attempted to really spend any time in my bedroom. But and that's really where the book comes from. The book that I wrote is called "Facing My Biggest Fear,"
mm,
and the reason I call it that is a couple of years before my wife passed away. My brother and I were having just a conversation. You know how you have conversations with friends,
mhm,
and sometimes they're meaningful and sometimes they're silly.
yeah, yeah.
And my brother and I were just talking, and he said to me, "What's your biggest fear in life?" And
Mm,
without even thinking about it, I said, "Losing my wife, Shelly. She
oh,
was the most important thing to me in my life." And
mhm,
so when it happened, I realized this was going to be a challenge, and so I didn't. I didn't waste time. I think I call it, when we get hit with heavy storms, when tragedy strikes,
Mhm.
it's easy for us to fall into the trap of letting it overwhelm us,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
then we can spiral deeper and deeper because we feel it. We're not facing it. We're just in it, and it's controlling us, right?
Mhm.
And so I didn't want to do that. I knew that the quicker I started addressing my feelings and those thoughts that I were going through and creating a plan, the quicker I would be able to, properly grieve for sure, but also um, continue down the path that she had helped build for our family. So
I love that. And I think that you're carrying on her legacy, right? And the way she impacted you, the kids can see her through you, and that alone is powerful.
it's interesting because um, I see it in my daughter so much, right? And we had 4 sons and we stopped having kids for 6 years. My wife always wanted a daughter because, when you're a Southern belle, when you're ultra feminine, and
Mhm.
you want to pass that along, right? So we had our first 4 sons, and we stopped. And I remember her telling me, "Well, maybe I'm just supposed to have boys, right?"
Mhm.
And then 6 years later, she came to me and she said, "You know what? I've been praying about this, and I feel like we need to have another. We need to try one more time for a daughter."
Mhm. Mhm.
And so uh, she said, "Will you pray about it?" And so as ultimately we decided that was the right idea, and we had twins, but one of them was a girl.
Wow.
And my daughter, watching my wife and my daughter together, I think taught my sons what how to treat women, how to treat the more feminine, nurturing part of human beings, right? And they watched her, my wife, and my daughter, and they watched how they beautified everything. They had this way of beautifying everything they touched,
Mhm.
right? It wasn't enough to have something. It was much more important to beautify everything.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think my sons really saw. I know I did. Is my wife, as she passed along those traits to my daughter. And
Mhm.
now my daughter has this femininity about her that just radiates as well. And it's such a beautiful thing because my sons see it,
Yeah.
right? And they see my wife in my daughter,
Mhm.
and they watch and the strength that my daughter has. It would be easy for her to fall apart, right? And it would be understandable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she and I go out to dinner alone once a month as part of my plan with each of my kids. I do that with each of my kids to
Mhm.
just check on them and have real serious conversations. And I'm amazed at her strength and resilience. And I know it's because she knows what her mother was, and that is what she wants to be too.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just, you're right. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. If I may ask, was she sick or she just suddenly passed?
She got sick and passed away 10 days later. She just got really, really sick and passed away 10 days later. So
Wow.
yeah, she went to the hospital and was gone very quickly. And so it was really very sudden for our entire family.
Wow. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry that happened. Wow. Yeah. That's very quick.
Very quick. Yeah. She just declined very, very quickly, and we lost her
Mhm.
very quickly. Yeah. Now I will tell you this is she passed away on a Monday.
Mhm.
And the Friday before that, I went to see her in the hospital, and she was not doing well. And I wasn't really updating my kids
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
her progress. I mean, it's a really hard thing to do, is to say your mom is declining very rapidly.
Mhm.
So I really didn't say much to them about it, but I could see, and I did have a premonition that she was going to pass. I felt like that was going to happen. And so
Mhm.
I remember the Friday before that Monday that she passed away, I called all my kids to the house, and I had my whole family there. And my 2 oldest sons now are married, so their wives joined us.
Mhm.
And we talked about how Shelly and I, my wife, had faced tragedy before. We had experienced some things in our lives that had been very, very difficult, each independently of each other and then together as a couple. And we talked about how one of the reasons I think Shelly and I had such a great relationship in marriage is because we had always decided together to face tragedy by turning to divinity, right? I mean, it's easy when you feel life is unfair to turn away and say, "How could you do this to us, God?" Right?
Yeah.
And that's easy to do, and that's understandable. I can understand that. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But with my family, I talked about how no matter what happens with Shelly, I'm going to turn to God, and I want you to do that too, because that divinity is one of the sources of our joy in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and having that lifeline that we can turn to whenever things are hard or difficult.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I challenged all my kids. I said, "Hey, I want you to join me. You watch me. No matter what happens, I'm
Mm-hmm.
turning to God, and I'm going to continue to, no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to join me if you want to do that."
Mm-hmm.
And I think they all did, right, based on the results and how we were able to
Yeah.
really not just survive the experience through the tragedy, but also really thrive and excel and continue down the path that she helped create for our family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. And death is part of life, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't. And many of us have faced those situations where we lose loved ones and kids and people that we deeply love and care about. What would you say to those people when it comes to how they grieve and for them to continue to live and not quit because there was a death? Because it's easy to do that and it's hard. What would you say?
I would say two things. The first thing I would say is you're going to be tempted
Mm.
to isolate,
Yeah.
right? None of us really want others to see well, not too many of us really want others to see us in pain and suffering. At least I don't. I'm not the kind of guy that wants the world to see my suffering, right? I don't want to be a burden to other people, right? It's not their suffering, it's mine. And there's a tendency to isolate. But what that can do is you can get to a point where you get in your own head and you can start to spiral, and you can start to have the depression or the frustration or the anger or the bitterness towards life.
Mm-hmm.
And those things will move you away from goodness in your life. They absolutely will. So one of the things I recommend is call people when you're struggling, is call people you love and express your love to them, and find people that you can call. Maybe they're neighbors or friends, or just don't isolate, right? It's the worst. It's one of the worst things you can do is call people that you love, tell them, "Hey, I just wanted to chat with you a little bit." They'll uplift you,
Yeah.
right? And in some cases, you'll even uplift them.
Mm.
And so that's number one, the first thing I would tell you to do. The other thing I would tell you to do is resist the temptation. Many of us, when we're hit with these big storms in life,
Mm.
we tend to tell ourselves, "Well, when this storm is over,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to my life,"
Yeah.
right? And I believe that's risky as well, because that can also spiral us, right? I think the best time to get to work is when that storm hits you, right? I mean, when you feel it and it's overwhelming, that is the time to say, "Okay, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
How can I serve other people? Or what can I do for myself? Or what can I do for my kids? Or there's people left,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've lost someone, but there's other people left."
Yeah.
What is to face that storm and head on and start the process of making a plan of some sort, right? How am I going to not only survive this experience, but thrive, right? How am I going to make this? How am I going to grow from this? Or how am I going to learn from this? Or what can I take from this and share with other people and do for other people? And what that'll do is it'll create action in you. And
Mm-hmm.
that action is going to give you energy, and that energy is going to make you go do things, and that's going to help you. It doesn't mean you're not grieving,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're still going to grieve,
Yeah. Yeah.
but but you can grieve in a way that serves other people and serves you,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And that's the most important thing. Those that are not with us anymore don't want us to fall apart.
Nope.
They want us to live, right? They want us to live for them,
Mhm,
and they want us to live our very best lives, and they want us to be happy and find joy and grow and serve. And so, yeah, when you feel like you can't do anything and you're just overwhelmed by the storm, that's the perfect time to say, what can I do at this moment? Can I sit down? And for me, it was writing my thoughts, right? It was writing stories about my wife, Shelly, and how we met, and
mm,
some of the trials we had faced together, and some of the wonderful things we'd shared. And a lot of my stories in my book are about experiences we had together and how she beautified the world, and that uplifted me, right? And I felt her presence.
yeah.
And so in a lot of cases, those things can be helpful for you, and they are actually a way to grieve as well, right?
Mm,
Grieving doesn't have to be falling apart and going into a shell and
mm,
crying incessantly. Grieving can be uh, focusing on the blessings and the joy
mhm,
and the things that those individuals brought into your life,
mm,
and making sure you focus on those things. So, uh, uh, we the things that you focus on grow. If you focus on your pain and suffering and your bitterness and anger, and
mhm,
that's going to grow. But
yeah,
if you focus on your gratitude for those people in your lives,
mhm,
and if you focus on what you're going to do and how you want to make your life
mm.
a glory to other people, like my wife did, that will grow as well. And you'll find those opportunities in your life to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're remembering her exactly how she would have wanted you to, right?
I
To
sure hope so. Yeah.
remember her. Oh, yeah, yeah, to remember her by the love that both of you shared and
Yeah,
by everything that
absolutely.
you went through together. Yeah, yeah. Have you heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross? Um,
Has she written a book? I might have
yeah,
known. I
on
might know the
grief,
book.
grief and grieving. I've read it. And I also did a 3 or 4-part series on my episode on grief
Okay,
and grieving. I read the whole book and I went into details and I shared my journey because I'm still grieving. People may not see it, doesn't mean it's not happening, right?
sure.
I lost my dad in 2020. My relationship with him wasn't good, right? I'm grieving that there wasn't any last words. What could I have said? And I know he carries so much guilt for not being there as a father, right? That's a type of grief. And then I lost my aunt to breast cancer the year after, and then my adoptive mom. It's like I've seen death so much in my life, even as a kid. It's not to be insensitive, but it's part of life, and I hope that people know that those people go on, they live on, and they're happy. They're not in pain where they are, and they're just content. I've shared on other episodes. I'm not a trained medium. I'm more out of whack. I don't know how to connect yet, but I've felt my mother's touch. I've seen her. She tried to show me the other side. And I've seen different angels. I've seen God and Jesus and all of that. It sounds crazy, I know, but I was born that way. And yeah, and she did apologize for some things she did, and because once they go over on the other side, the life review and everything else, it does hit them. But
Sure.
yeah. Do you believe
Well,
in
I
that?
you
I
know,
don't
I also,
far.
I also believe that I believe we're all here for a purpose, right? And that our purpose is to prove worthy to go live with God again, right? And I believe that. And so it's interesting. I've had many dreams about her since she's passed away, but
Yeah.
uh, you know, and initially my dreams, it was weird because I would see her in my dreams and I would say, wait a minute, you're not supposed to be here. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but I've gotten to a point now where when I see her in dreams, I feel like she's been given permission to visit me. And
Yes.
every time I see her now, I don't talk to her because when I talk to her, I wake up and I don't want to wake up and I know it's a dream. And so I watch her interact with my daughter or
Mhm.
flit around the house like she used to. I see all these things, but
Mhm.
One of my favorite dreams about her is, um, at the 1 year mark, um, I, I'm I really feel like I need to be a pillar of strength for my kids, right? And so there, on occasions, I visit this place of extreme grief and pain.
Mhm.
I don't want to live there, right? I'm a naturally buoyant and happy individual.
Yeah.
And so, but I know I need to visit there, right? I know I do, because that's part of life, and it's natural and it's healthy for me to
Yeah.
feel those things. But I tend to like to plan those things, right?
Yeah.
I'll say, okay, on this day, I'm just going to disappear from the world, and I'm going to grieve, right?
Mm.
And then I can come back to the world. And luckily I have God as my lifeline to bring me back, right? And so I had a dream about her, at about the 1 year mark. And in this dream, I found myself, uh, dreams are silly, right? You never know how you get to where, but I found myself in an apartment complex
Mm.
with a big giant hill in this
Mhm.
apartment complex. And I look over and I see a little pedal car sitting there.
Mhm.
And I see this little pedal car on this big hill, and I think, "Well, that looks like fun, right?" So I hop
Yeah.
on this pedal car
Yeah.
and I ride to the bottom of the hill, and my hair is blown in the wind, and it's just exhilarating, right? And I feel this exhilarating feeling. And
Mhm.
when I get to the bottom, I realize, you know, this is some little kid's pedal car, and I just jumped on it and took off. I don't know whose it is. I need to carry it back to the top of this hill, right?
Mm.
So I turn and put this pedal car under my arm and start to walk back to the top of the hill. And as I turn around, my wife is there, Shelly,
Wow.
right? Standing in front of me.
Mhm.
And I'm overwhelmed, right? I'm
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I miss her so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I fall to my knees and wrap my arms around her waist.
Mhm.
And I say, I don't think I can do this anymore. I can't live without you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be without you.
Mhm.
I need help.
Yeah.
And I looked up at her and she smiled. And I said, how long do I have to wait to be with you again?
Mhm.
And she looked down at me and smiled real big, and her eyes were glowing. And she said, just one day. Right.
Wow.
And then I woke up, and it felt exhilarating to see her
Yeah.
and to feel like I held her.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it reminded me that, time, we just have to live one day at a time, right? I mean, we really have to focus on how we can create good and happiness and joy in our lives today
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
and get through today. And then tomorrow we can try tomorrow, right? Well, that very morning, I woke up and I was just full of energy and full of life, and I was ready to go. And one of my sons was not driving, but needed a ride to work that morning.
Mhm.
And so we hopped in the car together. And normally we go this back way to work. And so it's kind of through some neighborhoods, and you really can't see very far ahead. And my son said to me, hey, can we go by the grocery store so I can grab something for lunch on the way? So we went a different way. Well, this way you can see miles ahead of you up this hill.
Yeah.
And you could almost see where he worked miles away.
Mhm.
And so as we're driving, he said, look, Dad, when we go this way, it's not that far to my work.
Yeah.
It's a lot closer than it looks.
Mhm.
And I think, my eyes teared up
Mhm.
because I realized that we will be together with them again. And it's not probably as far away as we think it is if we can remember to live, enjoy one day at a time, right? And magnify each day for what it is. And then the next thing you know, we'll be reunited, right? And I'm excited to see her again. But I
Yeah.
know it's not that far away. And I know if I just do this one day at a time, if I just stay buoyant and happy and try to spread happiness and joy however I can each day,
Mhm.
I'll be with her again very soon. And it comforts me to know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. There's such significance to your dream, and the fact that you realized in real life and it triggered the memory for you. Know that that was her. She has
Oh
been
yeah.
communicating with you all along. She's always been there. I don't know if you feel her in your house or have sudden memories of her or hear her laughing or just small things.
I see, I had another experience where I kept feeling her presence. And every time I would feel her presence, my daughter would show up.
Yeah.
Right. And it was so interesting because I would have sworn I would feel her there and I would turn around, it would be my daughter. And even on occasions where I didn't see my daughter, I knew she was nearby. I knew she was looking out for us. I call her my own personal guardian angel, right? I know she's my personal guardian angel.
Hmm.
And uh, I and it was really, it got overwhelming, right? Every time my daughter would come near. And one morning I walked by my daughter's room
Hmm.
and I saw her spritz some perfume on, right? And I said, wait a minute, what perfume is that? And she said, it's mom's perfume. And I said, oh, you rascal. I know, there's so many ways, but it was that the smell of my wife's perfume that was triggering that emotion that she was nearby.
Yeah.
And my eyes watered up, and my daughter said, if you don't want me to wear it, I won't. And I said, no, please wear it forever. Continue to wear it.
Hmm.
I need to feel her presence. And that, that smell makes me feel like she's nearby. And every my house is filled with my wife. Everywhere I go is filled with and she's there in spirit. So we feel her presence, and the kids and I talk about her all the time. It's a constant thing around here,
Hmm.
and it's a it's a way we celebrate her and her life by talking about her and really reminiscing about wonderful things she brought into our life. So
Hmm. Ooh. Sorry, I got chills. I feel the presence of people. I don't know who. I don't know how to articulate it. It's just kind of standing on this right side. I can't understand, but I feel something. Yeah, she's definitely present watching this, and she doesn't want you to cry. Yeah, I love that you're
no,
talking
that's too bad.
about.
If I
Yes.
get emotional, I'm going to tear up. It doesn't matter if she wants that or not, right? Certain things are going to get me a little bit, so I
Yeah.
apologize if that's yeah.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. If you could say anything to her, what would you say?
Oh shoot.
Sorry.
I'll share something with you that's important to me.
Mhm,
It's really important to me in my life. And my wife and I, one of the things that we did regularly is we would pray together
mhm,
regularly uh, over our kids. We would talk about our kids, and we would kneel together and pray,
mhm,
and just talk about, with God, with divinity, and ask for guidance and support and comfort and help. And I remember one night, I don't know what prayer was said. I don't remember that part of it, but I remember we climbed up in bed and we were sitting next to each other and we were just chatting
mhm,
about the kids and kind of the week's things that were going on.
mhm,
And we had been married about 20 years at this point.
mhm.
And she turned to me with tears in her eyes and she said, "You really love me, don't you?" And I thought, initially in my mind, I thought, how could you even question that? We've been married 20 years. We have 6 kids. I've never done anything
Mhm.
to ever make you question that. And initially I was a little frustrated, right? But that she didn't know before. And I thought, how could you not know before? But I didn't say anything to her at that moment. I just said, of course, yeah,
Mhm.
I love you more than you know, right?
Wow.
I love you more than you can ever imagine.
Mhm,
And we kind of left it at that.
mm,
But as the days passed following that, it made me realize that maybe she had these little insecurities
mm,
in her life. We all bring things into marriage. We're all individuals, right? And there's things that go on in our brains or in our lives
mm,
that we don't always share, right? And just knowing that she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt
mhm,
how deeply I loved her, and she was able to express that to me, is very comforting for me, right?
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks ago, um, I still pray at the end of my bed, right? She's not with me anymore, but I still pray, and
Mhm.
I typically pray out loud.
Mhm.
And a couple of weeks ago, the next morning, one morning I came downstairs, and my daughter, she said to me, "God can make mom happier than you."
Mm.
And I said,
Wow.
"Why would you? Why would you say that?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Because I heard you last night praying to God that He would take care of mom,
Mhm. Mhm.
and He's taking care of mom." And I said, "Are you listening to my prayers?" And she said, "Not all the time." And I said, I said, "Do I need to close my door?" And she said, "Please don't close your door."
Wow.
She said, "Sometimes I need to hear you pray because I know how you loved mom." And so I don't think that there's anything that I would need to tell her that
Mm.
I haven't already told her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think she knows deep down. And that's, maybe that's a challenge for those of you out there that are in a relationship or that are married.
Mhm.
Do
Mhm.
everything you can to make sure those that you love know beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do whatever it takes to get them there through service or love or kindness or whatever it takes, right?
Mm.
Because they won't always be here. And you mentioned this early. We need to make sure that people that we love know that we love them through our actions and our deeds and our words, whatever it takes to make sure they're aware of that. So I don't think I would tell her anything. I think she knows, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What if she wanted to have a conversation that you could hear? Like, what is it like where you are? You've been where I am. What is it like where you are?
you know, I don't even know if I'd want to have that conversation at this point,
Mm.
right? I don't I have some pretty deep beliefs,
Mm.
and I'm confident that I will see her again, and I'm confident, uh I hope that, I'm doing the kind of things that, she has more vision than I do now, right? She
Mm.
has heavenly vision.
Mhm.
And I would hope that I'm doing the things that would please her and please our God. And,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what I try to do. And
Mhm.
so I really don't, if I'm not doing it, I don't really want to know it right now. I'll figure it out. I don't really want to know. I'm
Yeah.
just going to try my best, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
learning process. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom, she showed me a little bit, and I don't know. I was scared, so I went like this, and I could see through my hand. She's like, "Come, come," and then when I
Yeah.
look through, I can't even articulate it.
Right.
There was a type of peace. It was a remembrance. It was so peaceful, so loving, so quiet. I can't put words into it. It's nothing
Right.
like earth. It was
Yeah.
just God or beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Uh,
Yeah. I believe I have the same belief as you, Bernadette. I believe that there's just peace and love and kindness and grace and mercy and all those things that,
mhm,
you know, we're on this earth for a reason, right?
yeah, yeah,
And we got to figure that out. Sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out what we're here for and what our purpose is. But
mhm,
certainly it's to glorify God and to glorify each other, right? And to take care of each other and to try to uplift each other
mhm,
and root for each other more than anything, right? I mean,
yeah,
I want everybody to experience that kind of peace. That's it's not just for me and my family; it's for everybody.
mhm,
And I think through that relationship, with divinity, we can experience a little bit of that here now.
mhm,
But like you said, I think it's so much more profound.
yeah.
I shouldn't say I can't wait, but I really can't wait to see my wife again. And I know it's going to be glorious, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
going to be
yeah,
glory. Yeah.
yeah, and they don't have time there, so I don't know, she must have said one day, because to kind of help you understand that
Right.
on your
Right.
time it's a day, but they don't really have time there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who do you write your dreams down? I have a dream journal that I keep.
Yeah. So I don't sleep well. I haven't slept well in a long time. So I wake up a lot.
Mm,
So I have a lot of dreams. A lot of them are just silly, random thoughts. You know how dreams are.
yeah, yeah.
I write down the ones that I feel like mean something, whether it's dreams about Shelly or my family. I
Mhm.
will write those down, and I usually remember the silly, really super silly ones too. But I don't write most of them down because if I wrote all my dreams down, I'd have two or
Yeah.
three a night, right? They wouldn't really mean anything.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. For me, I haven't dream in a while, because the dreams I have are mostly visitations.
mm.
And so those have significance to them. And I've had past life visions and stuff. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, sorry, my brain goes boop. Whew. This has been an amazing episode, and I'm just so happy that we got to do this, because it's going to help so many people to go through grief. What would you say to any male partners, that they've lost their wife or girlfriends?
Well, yeah, I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier is make sure you connect with other people that are here, right? Um, it's the tragedy it's going to change you, right? It's definitely going to change you. There's no way around it. Um, these kind of things are will heavily impact your life,
Mhm.
but again, you have a choice. Does it impact you? Does it destroy you? Does it damage your ability to love again? Does it, right? There's a lot of ways it can hurt you.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a lot a lot of things we can learn, a lot of ways we can grow,
Mhm.
uh, and a lot of ways we can really help other people. So it's a choice, right? The choice is yours. Do
Mhm.
you do you let it damage you, or do you let it, propel you and give you fuel for your rocket to blast into, the next you, the next better you? And
Mhm.
so, my kids and I talk about. We have this philosophy in our family called "You write your movie,"
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it kind of goes like this: we don't get to choose what happens to us, right? Things are going to happen to us in this life,
Yep.
and we're going to face tragedy. We're going to face challenges. There are going to be trials, but
Mhm.
we get to write the script on how we make our life go.
Mhm. Mhm.
And some people write tragic movies. Some people write horror movies. Some people write comedy movies, right?
Mhm.
We get to write our own movie. We write the script for what we do and how we act in our movie.
Yeah.
And what better than a triumph over tragedy, right? And
Mhm.
so, we get to write that script. If we're writing the script, let's write it with beauty and joy and love and happiness,
Mhm.
and right, continually moving forward and growing and learning
Mhm.
until it's our time, right? And
Yeah.
so that would be that would really be what I would suggest is you get to choose. You get to write your movie. Start writing it down. Write your movie. What am I going to do?
Mhm.
How am I going to turn this into good in my life? And obviously, there's no way. I remember right after my wife passed away, I did a lot of reading too because it was a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
And I read a quote that said, "For every challenge or trial or difficulty we face in life
Mhm.
comes the seed of equivalent or greater value."
Yeah.
And I didn't like it at the time
Yeah.
because there's no way that losing my wife, anything could be good enough to
Yeah.
to have a value of that,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really bothered me. I didn't like that, and it bothered me real bad, right? Sometimes we read things and we're like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, just recently in the past month, I went back and I read that same quote, and I read it different this time.
Wow.
And what I read was, for every challenge or trial or difficulty we face in this life,
Mhm.
there is the seed of equivalent or greater value. And the word seed jumped out at me. And as
Wow.
I thought about that, I thought a seed isn't a full grown plant.
Mhm.
A seed isn't a full grown bloom. It's a seed. We have to nurture that seed, right? Our job is not to expect the amount of goodness to equal the amount of pain. Our job is to nurture as much goodness and beauty as we can and see how we can grow that seed, right? And so it gave me energy to
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what, I can nurture a seed. I can do that.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm doing these podcasts and talking with people and giving away my book for free,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to nurture that seed. I want it to grow and grow and grow as big as it possibly can. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's my purpose now, is just to make sure that people know, hey, things are going to happen. It's our choice. We get to write the script for our lives. Let's write a beautiful, wonderful,
Yeah.
happy, happy ending, right? Either way.
Yeah, I
So
love that. Yeah. I've been through so much stuff. Not much phase me anymore.
yeah, yeah,
People will say, "How do you feel about this?" Like fluffy emotion stuff. I'm like, okay.
yeah,
It's part of life. I've built a hard exterior, if that makes sense, in a healthy way,
yeah,
because I'm protecting my seed, if that
yeah,
makes sense. And I
yeah,
have to do it at all cost. I always tell people that sharing your story may be a guide for someone else,
right.
because there has been so many people who have shared their stories when I was in the pit at the lowest of the lowest, and these people helped me see the light. I do believe that's what your story is doing to so
Yeah.
many
Well,
people. So many people.
I sure hope so, Bernadette. That's why we do what we do, right? Is to uplift others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two questions for you. The first one is, what is the meaning of life for you?
so I have a purpose. I have written down
Mm-hmm.
my purpose in life, and uh, my purpose is to live a magnificent and meaningful life spent serving others. And so that is my purpose, and that is the meaning of my life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever that means. And I specifically said magnificent because I am a buoyant, happy individual by nature.
Wow.
So I want to live a magnificent life, but I
Mm-hmm.
also want it to be meaningful for other people. And I can do that through service, right? And so I know if I spend my time, spreading my buoyancy and my happiness to other people and serving them,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can uplift a few other people in this life. And I think that is the meaning of life for me.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a challenge for individuals to figure out their purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? And don't steal mine. Go find your own, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
maybe take elements of different people's, but it's a, and even if you never really figure it out, but you
Mm-hmm.
try to, I think that's okay, right? The journey is really where it's at.
Yeah, I
So
love
that's the meaning of life to me, is to live a magnificent and meaningful life spent serving others.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Last question. Where can my listeners find you and support what you're doing? And where can they buy your book?
So don't buy my book. I give you a copy. I
Oh,
want
you
them to
give it for
download
free.
it from
Okay.
you for free. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's on a PDF so you can read it on your computer, on your
Okay.
phone, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So they can get my book there. If they want to contact me, you can catch me at my email, which is kyle@drivenautismdad.com.
Okay.
So yeah, so I support families that have kids on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driven because of the way we had to figure out our lives and help our son thrive.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do now, is I help families that have kids on the autism spectrum learn to support their kids in a spirit of love, raise them, give them tools and techniques to help raise them. So Kyle@drivenautismdad.com is how people can reach out to me if they want to chat. Also in the book, at the very end of my book, there is my email
Mm-hmm.
and contact information there too. So slide at the bottom of the book and you'll see how you can contact me.
Wow, awesome. Well, Kyle, what a powerful, moving, needed interview this was. I am just blown away by your strength and how much you've overcome and how much you continue to bless people through your story. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Come back
Thank you,
again.
Bernadette.
Come back soon.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.